place in the box seats today because our two guests have lots of experience in Omaha at the College World Series from the 70s and the 80s. It's Keith Moreland and Ty Harrington. How you doing, guys?
Hanging
Fantastic.
in there. Hanging in there.
I just want to say off the bat, we're happy Keith's back. He's one of the legendary players and hitters at Texas, and now along with Craig Way and Swindell's become the voice of the Longhorns. So we were all concerned there, and we're glad he's back in good health and good spirits, and we'll be back with us probably next season, covering the games.
It'll be a while before I'm back on the air, but first thing I had to do, I feel like I'm grounded by my parents. I can't even drive yet, so I have to be driven everywhere. So eventually, here they'll give me my car keys back.
So you got a caddy. It's like you're Tiger Woods. You got your own caddy right there.
I'm telling you, I would love to have my keys back.
In fact, Zonk, I tell that story. I said when I heard this happen, I think Swindell or somebody texted me, and I said I just saw him yesterday in Golf Galaxy. If you remember, you're in Golf Galaxy. Get some clubs. And I said he was in flip flops, a cowboy hat, and was getting some clubs, some shafts redone. I said, "What?" So
I was playing with my son and a member guest at Barton Creek, and then when you hit the ground and you don't know what happened, somebody needs to start checking you.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, good Lord, you're all right.
Yeah, glad you're looking
very
good.
Blessed.
Yes.
Well, Keith, we'll let you start because Ty's a regular and he likes to just bash on me. We'll give you a start. How do you see the World Series? Just your evaluation and what you see in the upcoming tournament.
Well, first of all, guys, I'll just go with the four of us sitting here and having a conversation. It is really surprising. It has been, I tell you, I got to go back to sometime in the mid-2000s since we've had all of these top seeds eliminated. You obviously have the number 1 seed in Tennessee not there. You have the number 2 seed in Oregon State not there. Stanford makes it through, and A&M makes it through. Other than that, you've got all these unseeded teams. In reality, Texas was a 9 seed. But when you have it's just a little different feel. So in that scenario, you really don't know. I don't know what to expect because I think we've got teams that have played better than they probably anticipated playing. And then now we also have teams that haven't played as well as we thought they were going to play. So that's the start for me. I think it's just surprising the number of unseeded teams.
Which sounds like it means it's a wide open. It's anybody's game. Whoever plays the best, pitches the best. So.
Yeah, I would concur with that. Let's just take the Texas side of the bracket. You have a veteran ball club in Notre Dame. Just doing my due diligence and receiving the information I did from ESPN, supposed to be working a series, and just looking at their information. I don't know. I'm going to refer to a long-time head coach of more than 20 years. Have you ever, Ty, seen a team that has 13 graduates on it and one baseball team? That's pretty incredible. And 9 of those 13 play on a regular basis.
Well, nobody's ever seen the age of all the lineups in college baseball like you see right now. It's unheard of. COVID has created this. And, I likened it, going back to the beginning of the year, you could kind of see, in my opinion, you could see this coming on with so many teams that
he called it.
You've got hitters that now have 1,000 at-bats in college baseball through their fall training, spring games, and summer baseball. Those are 1,000 at-bats. Those are priceless. You can't practice. Those are things that you can't get in a cage, Keith, as you know, and David, you guys know as former players and professional players, you don't get that. That's why they sent you to winter ball, was to get more at bats, and not to go over and hit in the cage. And so, to me, the maturity of the hitters, and now you throw a team like Notre Dame in there where you've got, I didn't know it was 13. I thought it was I knew it was over 8 or 9 or something like that.
8 of the starters are 5-year, 5th-year guys.
That just is, so it's older. So, and I think you guys will agree with some of this. To me, they don't chase the 1-0 breaker. They don't chase the 1-1 breaker out of the zone that all of a sudden flips the count against them, and now they're in a defensive mode. And then the other part of it is once a pitcher does get ahead, they don't panic in that 2-2 pitch and just swing to put the ball in play, whether it's bad contact, soft contact. You're seeing, to me, you see hitters spitting on ball. Texas, early in the year, Keith, you and I sat in the parking lot and talked about it one night. They were just basically taking balls 3 inches off the plate, 1.5 inches, 3 inches off the plate, not even bothering with them with 2 strikes. And then all of a sudden they get it to a full count, and they were just hammering those pitchers. And I think what you're seeing with Notre Dame must be very similar. I've only seen them play 3 times on TV. And I agree with you. I think a veteran lineup is going to be incredibly hard to get through. A veteran pitcher, too, if they choose to throw the left-hander, against them as well. And he's older. And so the experience part of a team already has come through for them to get where they are. What is the value of not having any experience in Omaha going to do for them? We've all seen that go 2 ways. We've seen it work for you, and we've seen it guys right in there and don't know anything different and find their way through it. And so that part of it to me is going to be fun to watch. And Keith, I think your idea, your thought on the so many top seeds being eliminated out of there, and then David, your initial responses, I think, is what not everybody, what baseball people are thinking is, I think it's up for grabs. Who gets hot and who plays good? Right. I'm always going to say this just because who's going to get hot, who's going to play great defense and not extend an inning for somebody. To me, is going to be one of those pieces of it.
Keith, Ty, would you guys both agree that OU maybe has the deepest staff? They've had a few kids come on the last month. I know the freshman that threw against us in the Big 12 championship game, he's really thrown well the last month. He was coming off Tommy John. They're a little bit deeper. Everybody else, it's like they got 2.5 guys maybe, and then they just try to piecemeal some stuff together. Any thoughts on that? Who may be the deepest pitching?
Well, to be honest with you, I think you got to go to the other side of the bracket to look at teams that have the better pitching. I would not call the Texas side of the bracket. When you look at Oklahoma, A&M, and Notre Dame, Tom, you may have different, but just my watching and again studying the stuff, much like I was broadcasting the series, I would be saying the same thing you're saying, David. Is I don't believe that there is any of these staffs that are horrible, but what they don't do is they don't have shutdown people. When you look at Ole Miss has 3 different guys that can shut you down at any time. And if you're trailing Auburn into the 8th, you got some real trouble. They got 2 guys on the back end of their bullpen that are really sound.
That's good stuff.
And then when you look at Stanford, Stanford is a team that it should have been beaten. They willed their way to victory against a really good Texas State ball club.
Really good Texas State club.
None of us got any sleep during the course of that super regional for sure. And you look at what they bring to the table. They are that cocky bunch. They expect to win. This is a club that has all but. Think about this one, Ty. You've done this as a head coach. If you have all but 70 innings of a year before back on your staff, and you have all the home runs that you have from the year before back, and then you add in these 2 young players that may be the 2 best young freshmen in the country to that deal, Stanford is a salty ball club. So I think they're the favorite in the other side.
I agree with that.
And then on our side of the bracket, if you're looking at Texas, I'm not working, so I can't be a Longhorn now. In that scenario, I like our chances as good as anybody because I don't think anybody's got anybody that can shut anybody down. And then the other thing is, you look at A&M, they struggled to get those 25, 26, and 27. Ty and I both played for a great head coach in Cliff Gustafson, and he'll tell you that's the 3 hardest outs to get. And I'm not sure that either of these 4 teams have a guy that can get the last 3 outs of a ball game. So that means I think it's up for grabs on the left side of the bracket.
How will the ballpark affect this? The bigger ballpark, obviously it's not Rosebud. Been there 10 years, but with the ball flying out all over the country, who will the bigger park favor? Is there anybody that gets an advantage from that?
Well, I think Notre Dame probably runs better than Texas and Oklahoma and A&M. I think when you look at those 3 clubs, I think they're built more. Could hit, when you look at Crooks and you look at Graham and you look at Treadway and Center, they're physical ball players and they can hit the ball of the ballpark. So Notre Dame is a team that will really run the bases and they're gap to gap type people. Of course, I say that they went in on Sunday or Monday and beat Tennessee with hitting the ball out of the ballpark. So
Right.
I really don't know. I think the ballpark plays big. There's no doubt. I think it's going to come down to running the bases and playing defense. And if there's anybody there, there's nobody plays better defense than Texas does. And none of the other 7 teams can play with them.
Ty, your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I tell you. No, I agree with Keith. I think on the line, I think OU does run the bases pretty good. I do. I think skipping them, early in the year, they relied on being able to do some of that. But I agree with Keith that I do think the pitching side of this saying nobody has a shutdown guys. If you look in there, Notre Dame has 6 guys with multiple saves. So they don't have that one person that they're going to, or the 2 guys, the whatever those, you're locking it down like it was, for Texas last year at the end of games and some other people as well that you knew you were playing a 7-inning game or an 8-inning game. And so I think that has an effect on it. I will say this, and this is just an opinion. If the ballpark does play big, teams with real power they're going to be able to punch a hole out there, I think, this year. I just think that
Stanford, Texas.
Yeah, I think guys that have legit power and not, almost power or power only when the wind's out of the south kind of power and which, a lot of the home runs this year in April, the wind predominantly blew out of the south, and most ballparks are fixed that way now and set up that way. And so that I think it did increase some of the homers along with the older hitters. But I think, Texas from an offensive perspective and certainly the defense, Notre Dame's not far from them. At 980, I think is what they were feeling, or 979 going into it. It's not, it's not. And I think that goes back, Keith, to your original statement about them being older and being more mature guys. They do run the bases really well. You got to keep Cole off the bases. And obviously, he's 20-something stolen, 21 or 22 or something like that. And has been really good. And so, there's certain people you got to be able to hold down. But I'm a defensive freak, and when it comes, I just think that's a separation because the first tell you talk about are 2 things: somebody had a homer, or if we hadn't made that mistake in the 5th, and what is that? Why do we make that? And so I just for me, I think it is up in the air. I do like OU as being able to run and create some offense, and I think their pitching has come on. To be honest with you, and they've got a guy they go to and they rely on in the back end as well.
Hey, Ty, go over what we were talking about off air, the stat you had found that you thought was interesting. I find it interesting too. Don't know how it correlates, but what teams were defending against Notre Dame, either the pressure they were that was different.
Yeah, this is interesting, and obviously I got to jump on a deal real quick and then come back. But Keith, I don't know and I'm sure you saw it, but the opponent's fielding against Notre Dame was only 959.
Right.
So when you start looking at that, you're scoring a lot of runs off errors. If somebody's fielding 959, it's a 21% difference between what they field and the team that they're playing. And I'm sorry, between what other teams are fielding against them as opposed to who's fielding against Texas. People are fielding 974 against Texas, which is pretty high.
Yeah.
And so to me, they're scoring runs off other teams' defense, and that's low. To me, usually historically, I just wouldn't think in the ACC people would field 959. I just wouldn't. And so what does that mean? I don't know. I know it's creating offensive opportunity for them.
Some of that is also in a lot of the ballparks too. The ACC has some newer parks, but a lot of times we see the turf, and turf makes a bunch of difference. I tell you what, veteran players though do, Ty, before you leave, veteran players take advantage when they're given opportunities. Yep. And so I think that's a big number that jumps off the pages. You got to take advantage of that opportunity. Somebody gives you a free one, you got to make them pay for it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And they're certainly able to and capable, and certainly also just going back to what you were talking about, their ability to run the bases. And I think got 78, 79 stolen bases, whatever it is, maybe more than that. They do. They have the ability to create some offense, and they did even a little bit against Tennessee.
A lot.
Yeah, they did. And I think one of the things that, that's going to be something Silas Hardwin's is going to be faced with, and, some of the guys on the front end. Now, you got two left-handed guys at your choices for Texas, and so does that slow down part of their run game?
I think that's a real big point. Pete doesn't have.
I agree.
Pete doesn't have a great move, but he does a good job holding runners. He's got a real good feel when he thinks they're going to run.
Right.
So I think that'll be important. My question, real quick before you leave, Ty, is when it comes down to it and you're managing a game like this, I've obviously broadcast and I understand my thoughts of what it takes to win or lose. But when you're going into a ball game and you're playing a game, one of the tendencies when you don't have a great guy at the back end of the bullpen, does that extend you? Have you felt like that David Pierce has had to extend both Lucas and Pete because of the fact is that he just doesn't know those guys at the back end of the bullpen?
Yeah, I think I mean,
no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, he does, and he they've gotten deep into some games, and historically maybe last year would have only been 5-6 inning, moments for him. And so I'll throw this back to you, Keith, and because you see Texas more than anybody. Do you see him? I think he throws Hanson tomorrow.
We had this discussion, Keith, before you came on.
Well, I think it's key. I think you have to go with Pete because he's that veteran guy. The moment's not too big. He's pitched in the moment. He holds the running game down. But the difference for me in the last 3 outings for Pete has been his fastball command, glove side command. He hasn't been as good. When he went through that stretch for about 6 or 7 starts, he had great command of that inside corner to right-handed hitters.
Yep.
And that's what makes him what he is.
That's right.
I think the big ballpark also helps him. Guys, you were talking about that, David, earlier. I think pitching in a big ballpark really helps him because he's a fly ball type guy. He's not going to get a lot of ground balls.
And if he's not
having an outfield that can run, you got an outfield that can go cover the ground and take care of the baseball as well. They don't make very many mistakes out there, throughout the year. And I agree with you. And, Keith, sometimes late in the year, if you get a little bit tired trying to go extension side, which is what he's trying to do when he's going glove side, which is the right-handed hitters, sometimes when you get a little bit tired as the year goes on, you end up going, all right, let's just stay away from them. Let's go to the outer half of the plate. But I think now with the idea of having some energy and it being, Omaha and all the above, I think he's able to get back in there and execute again. He's going to have to, because I agree with you. When he's good, he just exploits you on the inner half and doesn't allow you to get that barrel out and
then you start cheating.
You up.
Yeah, and then you start cheating to get there and you're out in front of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, no doubt. All right, guys, I'll be back on in a minute.
Thanks, Ty.
So to pick up, I was going to say what Tennessee were talking about running. Somebody on the Notre Dame staff, they do an excellent job. And there's lots of rumors that guy's headed to Florida State. We'll have to see how that plays out, after this series is over. But it looked like to me Notre Dame made the decision. We're not going to sit here and bang Burns all day. We're not going to, knock him out of the ballpark. What they did pick up on, he was 1.5 plus to the plate with the Russell kid, his first year catching, and they ran it didn't matter who you were. They had guys with 4 or 5 stolen bases still in second, still in third. They ran a lot. I noticed that the other day, like an awful lot.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, I don't think there's any option for Coach Pierce other than to go with Pete. And Pete does, again, being left-handed, he doesn't have a tremendous move, but he does a nice job. He's got a real good read. My broadcast partner, Greg Swindell, was one of the best college pitchers of all time. And he'll tell you, I didn't have a good move, but he had a good feel. And that's what Hanson does. He has a good feel of when to go over, when a guy might be thinking about going. And he doesn't get lazy. Left-handers that don't have a good move, you can't get lazy and say, I'm just throwing over to be throwing over. Go ahead and make your move where if you do get him on a time when he's going on first movement, that you got a good firm throw and it allows you to get the out at second base. And Hanson does that very well. When you look at the backside of this thing is we haven't talked much about what Notre Dame's going to do on the mound, because I've read, I think earlier today, that they're going with their veteran left-hander. And I think that plays well into Texas, where you very easily could see Daly at second, Staley and left, and Campbell and right, and EK not starting that ball game. So, you'd have 9 right-handed hitters in the lineup for Texas if that's the way it goes. I'm not sure that's the way that Coach Pierce would go with the lineup, but that's my initial thinking is that's what you would have.
He's been doing the last 2 weeks. He's been playing that lefty-righty.
Yeah, 9 righties.
Yeah. So, I just like the matchup. I know it's a veteran club, but it's a club that's not going to give up. So Texas is going to go out and have to play, 9 full innings. But I think it's a good matchup. I don't think if Texas matched up with Oklahoma or A&M in the first round would be as good a matchup. I think they get their feet on the ground at night in the second game. They don't have to wait around. 2 years ago or 3 years ago when not last year when they went, but the last time they went, they had to wait till late Saturday night or Sunday night to play, and you're there for 5 days before you ever play. That is really difficult to sit around, see what's going on. They get on the field right away, and I think that's a benefit for all 4 teams that play tomorrow.
So water cooler, play manager, you don't even have any second thoughts about maybe throwing Gordon game 1, throwing Hanson against because OU and A&M have been awful hot offensively to me. And it just feels like you better have a big game in that game too. I know you have to win game 1, but Gordon's thrown well. I mean, matchup wise, how would you see those two? I can tell you like Pete all the way, which you can't argue with that.
I do. I like Pete because I don't think the moment's too big for him. I mean, Lucas has made some huge strides, no question. And I like his changeup better than I like Pete's. And when you have hot right-handed hitter guys, one of the things that Lucas Gordon's been able to do, he's neutralized some of that big right-handed hitting with that really good changeup. Yeah. So I like that.
Okay.
I like him going second, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets trouble quickly. You'd see Tristan right behind him real quick. You could see that tomorrow night if Pete were to get in trouble in the early part of the ballgame. You could see Tristan, I think, really quick right after that, because I think that's the way David's going to use him. It's when the game's on the line, he does not buckle at all. When things are on the line, he's got a great mentality for that. He's sort of got a bulldog. He looks like he doesn't care. But he doesn't get the emotional, it doesn't anything bother him. And so I think that's the way you use Stevens is to get you out of trouble and maybe solidify a game, because David, you know as well as I do that you can win a ball game in the 3rd inning and you can lose a ball game in the 3rd inning, but everybody concentrates on 7, 8, and 9.
Right.
So there might be times that you need to go to a guy. So I would think that if you could get Hanson through 7, and pencil it and get to the end on Friday night, then on Sunday night, I think you would be Gordon and Tristan and try to get that in, because 2-0 in this environment puts you in a great situation. You do not play for 3 days if that happens. That's the unique thing about that.
Recharge the pitching batteries.
Yeah.
And Stevens is a guy. Sorry, Mike, but Stevens is a guy that the big ballpark might help. We've seen this year when he gets in trouble, he gets up in the zone, but he's still in the zone. And he straightens out. It's almost better when he's a little bit tired and he's back down around the knees and stuff's moving. I like Greg Maddux type guy. When he gets up, but a bigger ballpark, even if he's up, we got a chance to run it down the outfield with our speed. So the ballpark may play to Stevens' advantage here.
I would concur as the same. The other part of that is that for Tristan, I really think that to get back in some humid air. I know that we haven't even talked about that. It's 70 degrees up there today, which is very unusual. Probably going to be somewhere in the mid 80s tomorrow. But by the weekend, you're going to have ball games at 6 o'clock in the evening. They're going to be up around 90 degrees and some strong southerly breezes is what I've heard. So I think Tristan pitches better when it's a little cooler. The ball has a little more heaviness to the air. The ball sinks a little more. And, pitchers talk about it. Hitters talk about it. I'd rather hit in the daytime than I had at night because the ball's going to carry better. So, there's those little things that we all
see it better.
Understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keith, we haven't even talked about the intangible that a lot of fans are talking about, and that's the rivalry games. The fact that A&M and OU and Notre Dame, I guess to some extent, are on Texas side of the bracket, and then you have Arkansas on the other side. Can rivalries play a factor when you're in the College World Series?
Oh, I don't think there's a doubt. Let's start with the fact is with Notre Dame, y'all probably have already seen this, but the last time they made an appearance there, they went to Florida State, upset Florida State, which was the #1 team in the country, and they lined up against Texas and Justin Simmons and the 2002 national championship team from Texas. So it's sort of unique that Notre Dame hasn't been there. Well, they get back, they have to play a team that's been there 38 times. So, Notre Dame's thinking, well, why do we got to line up and play these folks? So that's an really interesting matchup. And just because of the history that's right there, it's been 20 years since they've been there. And the last time they had to face us. On the other side, I really and truly like both of those head coaches. And on the other side, they have done really good jobs. I think when you start with Skip, the thing that jumps off the page, I think he understood he might have had a little heat coming his way this season. He needed to make some things happen. I think he's relaxed, and just talking to him and been around him, and I think that shows with his team. They really looked very calm, very much. They didn't look nervous at all at Virginia Tech. It was sort of like, even though there was a huge crowd and Virginia Tech should have had all the advantages in the world, Oklahoma went in very calm. Jake Bennett is a guy that is a veteran guy on the mound. He doesn't get shook up. They've got a good guy on the back end to close things down. And then all of a sudden, they've got some talent. You look at 3 or 4. Jimmy Crook's behind the plate, too. Don't underestimate that guy. That guy can hit a little bit. He does a great job leading that staff.
I think OU's gotten better, and I think Ty was going there a while ago. The first of the year, they were pitching a little bit, and they were moving runners. They were stealing bases, hitting the ground ball, they were manufacturing runs. But I think over the course of the year, they've gotten a little bit more offensive. If you watch them the last 5 or 6 weeks, I think bunting. People laugh when you bunt. You start tracking the baseball. Now, when it's time to hit, all of a sudden, sometimes your pitch selection, your whole at bats can get better. You can have better at bats from playing some small ball for a while. And I think you've seen them evolve offensively.
David, that's a really good point. I concur. And then some of that has to do, every team sort of takes on the environment of the head coach. They sort of take on that demeanor. And I really believe this is by far Skip's best job. I think he's been more relaxed. I think he's let things come to this team and let things develop. And sometimes you can get impatient and try to force the action. And I really believe this team's playing its best baseball. I mean, as a matter of fact, since May 1st, there have been very few teams that played much better baseball than Oklahoma has, and they played some really good people during that stretch. So I think this is a really good matchup. And then on the other side, you've got a bunch of guys that have been slung together with the transfer portal. And Slosh has done a great job of sort of getting them all going in the right direction. And you can see 4 or 5 different guys' attitude. I mean, some of them are just so excited to be in that environment because they came from environments that was not conducive to winning. Even though they had some baseball talent, all of a sudden he's got some guys, a good mixture of some young and old. And you win the Western Division of the SEC, you're a good ball club. So they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, a lot of people are making.
Go ahead, Mark.
I'd say making fun, but talking about the fact that A&M has 2 College World Series wins in their history. But don't you think because of Schlossnagle having a great history at the College World Series, that's going to help him? Because I'm a believer that the coaches' personality and how they're able to handle their teams for not just one game, but for the entire trip of Omaha is huge.
I agree with you, Mike. And if you've ever been around Jim is not an X's and O's guy. He's a lot more like Augie than a lot of people give credit. He works on mental things, mental preparation, the timelines, making sure everybody's in the right spot, those type of things. And he turns the pitching coach over to the pitching coach. He turns the hitting over to the hitting, and he oversees. He is the definition of a head coach. He works on the mental. Yeah, he manages and he manages these people's emotions. He manages personalities, which is important to do. He understands them. He does a really good job. He is a guy, if you watch him, his highs and lows in a game, if you watch him, you'd never know if they were up 5 or down 5. And I think that shows in his club. And I think they did a really good job in the portal to find some players that were hungry. And boy, when you get guys that got a little talent and they've been at some other program and they haven't had a chance to play professional ball and they're still looking for a chance to play college baseball. And the portal has really changed that. And he's done a really nice job. I think he hadn't told me that, but I've talked to him a couple of times. But if you really ever got him down, he would probably say this is his best coaching job of his career.
Yeah, I thought that David may have been a little overmatched back in 2018, his first year by Omaha, and they went 2-2. So, I think that the coach is a huge factor in how the team responds.
I would concur. Sometimes teams are so happy that they made it to the College World Series that they forget that they've got to go compete.
Yeah. They're there to win. Yeah.
You walk in that door, it's a drawn out affair now. It's so much different, Mike, than it was when we were going to it. I mean, you got there on a Thursday, worked out, started playing on Friday, and you played every day till there was a champion. So it really tested your bullpen and your pitching staff to go win the College World Series. Well, you know what? It's spread out pretty good now. The championship game, the way I understand it, is if it goes 3 to the final series, is on Tuesday, a week from Tuesday. So you're there 10 or 12 days. Yeah. So it really stretches out. It's a lot different. It's more of an event now. It gives a chance for pitching staffs to be a little more intact. You don't have to be as deep as I think you did in the past. So it's a different environment now. It's fun to go to, and anybody that hasn't gone, you got to make it once.
Yes.
And Keith, from your day, and then I was on the front end of this when as we know, in '89, we had the one game, hadn't lost all tournament and lost. We know that story. But do you think they have the NCAA tournament right now? I do. I think you do have to have some depth in the pitching staff, but you don't have to have like 8 big league dudes to win it. In other words, basically the NCAA tournament is a 4-game tournament, a 3-game series. Then you go to Omaha, you do a 4-game tournament and a 3-game series, and it's spread out. So you get to recharge your pitching. I like the format now. I think they've gotten it right.
Well, quite frankly, I went 3 times, finished 2nd, 4th, and 1st, and I've gotten this disagreement with my head coach, and he said, well, it was hard to go win it then. It was hard to go win it, but boy, it's really hard to go win it now. I mean, you are taxed as a team. Just think about it. You've got a non-conference season. You got a conference championship, so that's 1. You got the conference tournament, that's 2. Then you got to go win a regional. Then you got to go win a super regional, best 2 out of 3. And then you got to go win another regional tournament against one side of the bracket before you play 2 out of 3 at the end. I'm telling you, the national champion, whoever it is, and has been for the last since 2000, has paid a real price. The best team has won because I just don't think you can get through that whole environment without not being the best team.
And clicking on all cylinders. And that's what I'm asking. I like the format now. I think it's a fair format. I guess that's what I was trying to do. Did you like the a true 8-team double elimination tournament, 6-game regional, 16 regionals? I mean,
I first of all, I think the only thing that I'm not real fired up about college baseball are the conference tournaments. I think you would. I'm not sure. I love the fact that a team can come out of nowhere and still a bid. I guess you need to give that opportunity. But I think there should be a huge advantage for a team, or the top 2 teams in the league should get buys and get somewhere down the line where the conference tournament doesn't do a whole lot for me.
Well, I was talking more about the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, but the NCAA tournament, I think is done as well as you could do it. They try to get everything in over the course of a weekend from Friday to Monday, which, that's the way it should be, because that's what college baseball is about. It's about weekend series. And there's a lot of college baseball now that's played 4-game series over a weekend. There's a lot of conferences, especially out west, because there's so much travel in the WAC and the Mountain West, a lot of these the West Coast Conference, they play 4 game weekends because the fact is there's so much travel, and that's to get their 56 games in over the course of time. So I think we're used to having 4 games over the course of a weekend. So I do believe the format's in good shape.
The one thing I don't like is the fact that you could play a team so many times in the course of the tournament, of the College World Series. I actually like the fact that the softball Women's College World Series
crossed over.
Yeah, they crossed over. So Texas didn't play UCLA again. I mean,
yeah,
it may have been good for Texas because UCLA was so good, but I like that you play a fresh team. So you're not going to play, in this case, Texas could play, which could be good for the fans, but they could play Oklahoma or A&M 3 times.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they could play Notre Dame.
Or Notre Dame, but I'm saying that'd be great for the fans.
Yeah,
but that's the one thing I don't like about the tournament setup is playing one team so many times to get out of that 4-team bracket.
Yeah, I don't know that the NCAA controls so much, but the coaches and the coaches committees have a lot to do with it. And I know that was voted on about, I think, 3 years ago for softball.
Yeah.
And that was changed not by the NCAA, but by the coaches across the country, the softball coaches across the country. So I'm positive that the coaches have an opportunity of things they voted on. But before we make a change on how they do it, they need to add an extra coach first.
Yeah.
That's the biggest joke. Basketball has 5 guys on staff, and they have 12 players on scholarship. You got 27 players traveling on scholarship. All 27 have to be on scholarship, 35 in your program, and you've got 2 full-time coaches. There's something wrong with that.
I'm hearing that's coming. I'm hearing this should come.
It should be changed, and it should be changed soon. You're seeing all these programs across the country. If you watched, and any of the folks that out there are college baseball fans, saw some great venues, really did a great job of showing off some ballparks across the country. And the stadiums are becoming more self-sufficient. Teams like Virginia Tech made their program self-sufficient this year. It paid its own bills, first time in the history of that program. You take the University of Texas, which has been paying its bills for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's all about building a ballpark and the product you're putting on the field.
Yeah. Is there looking back at Texas history, coming so close so many times, with all those national championships, which is great, but coming so close so many times, is there any one second place finish that really just gets you? I know what Lowery's answer would be because it'd be an 89, but I assume, Keith, it'd be your second place finish. But there have been so many through the years. When you look at it, Texas could have as many as USC in the number of national championships. But close
I think the best team, the 89 team, I got to know pretty good because I came back and went to school at the end of that. And with a lot of those guys that were underclassmen at the time. And so let's see if I can get this back right, get it stand back up. I remember that was a tough one. I'm going to say 2004 when you get to the championship series. 2009 was a really good series. I mean, it came down to the third and final game.
Yeah.
Look at 85.
Taylor Youngman was great. A lot of things happened, but that 2004, they ran on to 2 pitchers. When you looked at Windsor and Romero from Cal State Fullerton, and it being Augie's old school and him there and defending national championship, chance to do back-to-back, which is we've seen is very difficult to do. Yeah. Oregon State has gotten that done in the last quarter century, but that's the only team that's been able to do it. And so that was really difficult. And being a broadcaster and representing the university in there, that was a really tough loss. That was a tough couple of ball games. And the way they came out, very low-scored games where guys just pitched magnificently. And so that's the one that sticks in my mind.
Mike, anytime you finish 2, it's a tough loss. Doesn't matter the year. That's not a good feeling sitting in another dugout.
Yeah, I know you know that firsthand.
We touched on, Ty and I talk about this. What's happened to West Coast baseball, college baseball?
Well, let's don't take anything away from it because I really think that the program at Oregon State does a great job, and he recruits the West Coast, gets a lot of kids out of Los Angeles.
Specific California, Arizona, where are they gone?
Well, the one that probably is most surprising to me is what's happened in Arizona and SC and the Irvines, teams that we really thought for a long time were programs that were up and running. Fullerton. But a lot of those programs have gotten where they haven't invested the money. Arizona plays in High Corbett Field. They haven't built a new ballpark, something that they need to do. Arizona State has tried to attack it, and they have got a new place to play. They're playing in the old Municipal Stadium in Phoenix, so they're playing in a little better ballpark now. So we'll see what happens. But you're seeing players being recruited. That's the one thing that there's still talent, and especially Southern California, right. But they're playing in a lot of different other places. Y'all look at the Michigan roster, 3 Southern California kids. You look at Nebraska's roster this year, they're 2 best players from California. Oregon State goes in and robs California every year.
Do you think part of that has to do with COVID because California was so strict for a while?
Yeah, it could be. More than that is you don't have a dominant team. Jackie Robinson Stadium, Coach Savage has done a great job, and he's always going to be able to recruit pitching.
Yeah.
But it is so difficult to hit in that ballpark at night. You have that moisture coming off the Pacific. The ball doesn't carry at all. You just don't see great offensive players going there. Now they've got great pitching, and they will year in and year out. And if you're a pitcher, you think, well, if I pitch there, I'm going to have a good ERA because I can make a mistake and get away with it. SC hasn't produced those kind of players. So you're just seeing those really good players there. They're making that transformation, and they're coming more east or north.
Well, and Mike, you brought up COVID. It's way before COVID because I looked this up, just try one of my night owl practices, scanning, it's not politics, it's college baseball or high school football. And so I'm looking from 47 to 2000, the Pac-12 and or California schools, Cal State Fullerton, et cetera, won like almost 60% of the World Series titles. From 2000, you take out Oregon State because, yeah, it's West Coast, but it's kind of a newcomer. What's his name built it, and it's incredible. They're robbing the Tech California. There's like 3. There's like 3 from Arizona and California titles. 3, maybe 4. I might be missing. UCLA got 1. I think Arizona
got 1.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like every other year like it used to be. So
no. But the other part of that is, David, start looking at the ballparks. Look what the Big Ten. I read an article in Baseball America last year. The Big Ten has invested more than $550 million into their baseball parks across the Big Ten. So all of a sudden now you've got programs that are understanding it's becoming it used to be a Southern California and South United States was college baseball. It's just what it was. I mean, the temperature was made for it. Baseball was something that people were going out to play, and they just didn't play in the North and the Northeast and in the Northwest at all. And now you're seeing, especially conferences, throwing lots of money at ballparks and
Penders at UConn. They had a very good. I mean, he has good clubs every year, but they're really good. You're seeing better baseball out of the East, is what you're saying.
And Coach Penders is another. There's another thing. Coach Penders could ride his ticket a lot of different places across the country as a coach, but they've been willing to pay and keep him there. So that's the other thing. The influx of what they've done to the stadium and the coaches that they went out in these conferences to hire people, and I'm telling you, the West Coast Athletic Concert is getting better. The Sun Belt is getting a lot better. There's no doubt. You saw Texas State, I mean, right to the end to have a representative there. And Georgia Southern was a really good program as well.
Yeah.
And now you've got 6 teams that are either current or future members of the SEC out of the 8 College World Series teams this year.
Well, they still play great baseball in the SEC.
Yeah.
So, and Texas is right there. Now, I think this bodes well for Oklahoma because Oklahoma and Texas, we haven't even got there. I think what you saw came out publicly. We've got one more year of the Big 12 as we know it, and that'll be it. And Texas will be in the SEC in the fall of 23.
I tell you, jump back on real quick and not to cut in. And I don't know what I missed on that with I agree with Keith. I think one of the key elements in the growth of baseball in the SEC and even back towards us were about the facilities and the change in the facilities and the growth of them. If you go back in the mid '80s, Baylor was winning some of the facility, wasn't very good. They built this beautiful facility, and all of a sudden Boomer Weems wasn't a Texas kid, and they were going out of state and bringing kids in, and the first thing they show them are these beautiful ballparks.
Yep.
And on the West Coast, you just don't see that. They're nice. They're okay. I went to Stanford for the first time, Keith, when Texas State was out there. I woke up on that Monday morning and flew out there, and I wasn't going to have all the fun out there. And so I'd never been there before. And I walked in, I was like, this is nice.
Sunken Diamond is just what it is. It's been the same. It's been the same since I played there in the 70s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right. And then so think about now, you look at the programs, even like Texas State, when we built the new stadium and what that started doing. So I think the facilities, the interest, U of H built, their nice ball, around here. And then the SEC just blew up. Remember, the Alex Box Stadium was just pretty good. And then all of a sudden, man, they start winning. It was better than what everybody else did. And then all of a sudden they were like, we got to up our game and keep it going. Ole Miss did the same thing. Arkansas did the same thing. Think about what was the stadium we used to play in Fayetteville? What was that little ballpark? You guys remember?
It was a Pony League Park, wasn't it?
Yeah, something Coalfield or something like that. I don't remember.
The asphalt AstroTurf right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think there's been everybody up their game in facilities and interest and resources to college baseball down here. And I just think people started coming down here to play baseball, or out this way, however you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's why you're seeing more of the Big Ten and the A-10. You're seeing some East Coast schools really start putting money into it. And because of that, you're seeing they're getting better talent, better players. And I think you're right, David, that in this conversation would be, you just don't see the teams in the universities and the cities joining in and doing anything in California to upgrade their facilities. So players are looking at that. So you're going to go play in front of 7,500 tonight, or we're going to go play in front of 1,100.
Yeah, that's right. If that, in fact, we were talking last time, same subject, Ty and I were talking. And if you remember last year, Arizona had a good club, very good hitting club. And they showed their regional or super regional, whatever the part of the tournament they had out there. And it was like, I compared it to watching the Cuban, when you go to Cuba, you see the 1952 cars, and then they'd flip to the SEC or to Dish Falk or something. And it's like these beautiful modern, college facilities. And they were playing their fence was still wooden. I mean, it was like apples and oranges, completely different. So yeah, might be a lot of truth to that. Plus, I think there's a lot of migration out of California. So,
if you're an 18-year-old kid, and you're watching the super regionals and regionals, and you're watching what's going on in Austin, Texas, and all the crowd and the sea of orange, or they flip over to Baton Rouge, or they flip over to Fayetteville or whatever
Tennessee.
And you're a kid watching that, and you're thinking yourself, and then they flip over to UCLA. And John Savage is one of the best.
Absolutely.
And knows this. He's one of the best baseball coaches you'll have a conversation with. And what they've done at Fullerton for over years, what Augie and Hook and those guys did. And you flip over and there's 1,500 people there.
Maybe.
I mean, and there's no life to the stadium. I mean, if you're a kid, you can choose where you want to go. Shit, it'd be hard to pass up.
We've hit the Texas side of the bracket. We touched on the other side. Let's go over a little bit more now that you're back on, Ty. And so Keith had mentioned he really liked the pitch. You liked Auburn? Was it Auburn or Ole Miss? Because I don't know much about their arms.
All right. Well, Ole Miss, and this is the best job Mike's done in his career. They started out hot at the beginning of the season, much like Texas. They lost a big arm to Tommy John early, but they have found some guys. I mean, you go into Southern Miss, and if anybody's been to Hattiesburg and seen that ballpark and seen that crowd, and you shut that team out back-to-back days, you've got some guys that are really pitching well, and they pitched well in their regional. They pitched well in their super. So they're the one team in that side of the bracket I think is there because of pitching. Now, Ty may have a different view of that, but
Yeah.
I think there's no question that they're there. And then on the other side that they play in the first round, they play Auburn, who has, in my opinion, the second best hitter in the nation is their first baseman. I mean, he's much like Melendez. He is a guy that if you pitch to him and you make a mistake out of the plate, he handles it. His body type doesn't look good, but he is as quick to the fastball in the inner half of the plate as anybody I've seen all season long, maybe even quicker than Ivan is. Now, he may not have that expansion and the ability out over the plate that Ivan brings to the table, but they've got good starting pitching. All three of their guys are, I would put them in upper echelon starters, but they got a lefty coming out of the pen that named Schreiber that is really good in the 6th and the 7th, and then they get to the 8th and they turn it over to this right-hander. He's as good. He is the closer, the best closer of the 8 teams that are there.
I think Stanford, Ty and I were talking, historically, Texas and Stanford have the big MLB arms and then just really good line drive hitting guy, mixing a Moreland every once in a while. Good offensive, know how to beat your players. And this year's kind of flipped. Texas and Stanford can mash. I think Stanford can really hit. I mean, I think they can hit right there with us.
Well,
I think their pitching's a little bit down this year.
That left-hander that leads off from them is special.
Now, one guy's a switch hitter. He goes up over the tree. I keep telling you, it's over the trees, Ty, out there in Colorado.
I know.
The ballpark, like those trees are way out there, and the ball doesn't carry historically. So
I think they're really physical.
Yeah,
I saw them in person that night on that Monday night, and they were very physical. I mean, they took very aggressive swings. Obviously, Stivers was really good that night for 7 innings. I was telling David, I think one of the things that you have to be able to do is that he was able to command a big 2 different breakers and hold it. And if you're going in there thinking you're going to sneak fastballs in there nonstop, you're wrong. And they're hunting them and they get them and they don't miss them very often. And so I think Stanford offensively, I agree. I think their starting pitching particularly was just okay to me for their standards.
Right.
And for what we're used to seeing, Mike Messina, whoever it may be, guys that, really big arms and, 6'5" and just, power fastball, power breakers. I thought they relieved pretty good, to be honest with you, and because they had to hold some teams late. And I thought UConn had a pretty decent offensive team. And so I like Stanford as an offensive team. I think they are defensively good enough. The shortstop makes some dynamic plays, and I think he's a good player as well. I only got to see Auburn twice, Keith, and you described whatever I got to see against Oregon State the 2 times, and maybe one time before that. You described them perfectly. They get to the later part of the games. You're playing 8-inning games with those guys right now, and the first baseman can hit. He really can, and it doesn't matter if it's right or left either. And,
Sonny D,
yeah. I mean, he can, and I think those guys in the SEC, in the Big 12 too. And Keith, you see it more than I do. You get to this time of year, those guys have seen power arms all year long. They don't just see them every once in a while. They see them all the time. And so when you get late in the seasons, then you're seeing good pitchers, obviously, because you don't get the postseason without them. But it's not like they're just overwhelmed by velo, and it's not like they're overwhelmed, and they don't have really that many bad at bats. In my opinion, you may feel different.
You get to this point. There's very few guys that have enough arm and enough velocity that can intimidate you as a hitter at this time of the year. I mean, there's those guys that are going to run one up there every once in a while at 94, 95, but okay. But they're going to pitch at 91, 92, which you're used to seeing every day. You're used to seeing it, and when inter-squad, you're used to seeing it everywhere. So it is not something that intimidates. We've talked about this whole thing, Ty, and the one thing is the one team that is a wild card to me of this is Arkansas, because, I mean, this is a team. If you didn't get the opportunity, but I watched 3 games against them against Oklahoma State, and I'm telling you what, this is a team that has a lot of will to win, and I don't ever take that away from a team that just refuses to give up, because they could have easily been beaten 3 different times and not gotten out of the regional.
You know, that's pretty interesting because you know they got Tennessee last year. They were the #1 team, and and you saw them though. You could see them leaking oil though because they kept throwing Knapp or I know I'm mispronouncing. He kept using him more and more, you know, and it was like he was going to him in the 6th inning every game, conference tournament, regional. Yeah. He wore out, and they finally got beat. But now, not as many expectations. I mean, you expect them to be good, but they're not ranked #1. So you're right; they come in. That could be a dangerous. You know, not people not talking about them a whole lot. They could be dangerous.
Yeah, and I think when you look at their lineup when they post the lineup on, I don't know if that game's Saturday night or it's Saturday afternoon. I don't know which one there is at this point. I haven't looked at that side of the bracket as much, but I will tell you this: when you look at their 2, 3, 4, 5 guys in that order, those 4 guys that are right there together, all those guys can hit at a really high level, and they're not tremendous home run hitters, but they square one, they can hit it out of the ballpark too. So I think Arkansas that would be my sleeper in that side of the bracket, is because I haven't seen this conversation, other conversations, or watching other people discussing and try to analyzing this World Series. Nobody's giving Arkansas a lot of credit, and I'm telling you, you go into North Carolina and win that regional.
Yeah,
that's a tough place to go win a game in Chapel Hill.
Arkansas Stanford's the afternoon game on Saturday, and Ole Miss Auburn is the night game.
Okay, well, that Saturday afternoon that'll be a good one. That's where folks kicking their shoes off, putting their feet up, and sitting down for 4 hours, because that's what college baseball is.
Yeah. So, of all this talk, guys, Ty, Keith, am I hearing this could be a very offensive College World Series?
Well, it's been an offensive year.
It's been an offensive year, hasn't it? Yeah, it has.
I mean, not to interrupt Keith, I'm going to be shocked if it's not. And now that doesn't mean that some weather front can't come through, or the wind just start busting out of the south to make it harder for them to leave the yard. But it's been offensive all year, older hitters all year long. You know, you got college pitchers that probably a little bit more, exhausted now.
Yeah.
And a little more, a little bit tired. And I just think it's set up. We don't know what's going to happen. I just think it's set up that it could be one. They're going to punch a hole in the wall in Omaha this year, I think.
Well, the best way to answer that would be real quickly. Set an NCAA tournament record for home runs in the regional. All the regionals combined together was a record. Super regionals, all the regionals that combined for all the games together set a record. So you have more offense coming to Omaha than you've ever had. It's probably since the 21-14 championship game with USC and LSU.
Yeah. I got to think this too. I got asked this question a little while ago. I'm curious from the other 2 Longhorns and Mike, you as well. So they asked me, typical thing I have about Omaha, your trips, what was it, blah, 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 like, and I said, let me tell you what nostalgically, for me, what I think about. The first one is I think about the dark brown dirt that I got all over my socks. They had that dirt that was just a little bit different, color than everybody else's. But
you're right.
The second part, the dinging of the bats, because it was ESPN. Remember the old ESPN logo would come on the TV.
Oh, yeah.
And the dinging of the bat. And then last but not least, the guy that wore number 18 with his hands in his back pocket with the biggest dip in his mouth, coaching third base.
Yes.
And that, to me, that was what the College World Series was, and will always in my mind when somebody says, "Hey, you going to Omaha?" That's like one of the very first pictures in my mind that comes out is Coach Gus over in the third base box with the biggest dip you've ever seen in your mouth,
and as calm as a cucumber.
Yep.
And it's just how can you be that calm?
I picture him in that corner suite in the Holodome.
The Holodome. Does that place even exist anymore?
I hope not.
I think because Gus wanted to be there every year, that around 2000 they changed the rules, and that's when they decided the NCAA picked where the schools got to stay.
Yeah, they did.
I will tell you, this is a quick story. To me, it's funny, and to everybody else, it may not be. But in '85, back then we were still taking the yellow school buses.
Oh yeah,
from the hotel to the ballpark. You can remember that. David might have been outside of that mark.
Yeah, we got the big buses.
Yeah, so we had the yellow school buses. And we actually had a guy one time who was driving our bus, and he had a hat on and said, "I got stoned one night for a month." And that was the guy who was driving our bus. But beside that, Coach Gus and his brother, Marvin, had come out to the games. And so they were sitting. It was just so, to me, we're playing for the national championship that night. We're getting on the bus to play game 1 against Miami. And he's sitting, going back to Keith's point about it being so calm and collected. And he and Marvin are carrying on a conversation like they were at the dinner table, like at the lunch table, like they were back home. Just talking about life and this, and coach was talking about the game. And yeah, we're going to throw Swindell tonight. And yeah, we're going to. And it was just like a everyday conversation. And my stomach, I was about ready to throw up. And it was just and I wasn't starting. And that was just a bus ride over.
Yeah, Ty, you were about to throw up. You could smell that iced tea in that instant glass.
You got some peanut butter and honey up there, too.
Lord of mercy.
Last day before we leave, and Keith, if you can, I know you're not working games this year, but pick your bracket winners and who you got in the finals and who you think is going to win it all.
You know what? I'm going to go outside the box on the other side of the bracket, and I'm going to take Arkansas. As you can tell, I just think that that's a team that is underneath the weeds, and I like that. I think they were going to play a little relaxed and free. And for me, it's all about game 1 for Texas. I think Texas wins the bracket if they can win game 1. That to me, they're playing a veteran club that will not be intimidated. Texas should be the same way. Same team coming back. A lot of experience. Texas has a ton of guys that have been in this environment and produced in this environment. That's going to be important. I just think getting through game 1 is going to be so important. So if Texas wins game 1, I think it's Arkansas and Texas in the finals. If Texas were to drop game 1, I'm gonna take the Aggies to get to the finals.
Okay, Ty.
I'm similar in that physically and emotionally. I think Texas is in the finals. I think it's Texas and OU on this side finals. I just think OU is so hot right now that I think it ends up being the Longhorns and the Sooners on this side. And, I think Texas prevails and gets to the finals. And I'm like Keith. I think their path, is favorable if they can win game 1. It really is. And then on the other side, for some odd reason, I go back to there was a point in April where I thought Auburn was playing really good, and then they disappeared. Then they came back to life, and I'm after watching them the other night, I was just like, my gosh, I thought they were really well balanced, and so I for some reason, and I don't know that side as well like Keith does when it comes to Arkansas.
Yeah.
And so I'm basing that on just what the last couple of games I saw with what they did. And it kind of goes against me a little bit because I'm like Keith. I think Arkansas, they've got, obviously the pedigree, but they flipped a different switch. And I think that they got, for lack of a better term, I think they got pissed and said, oh, yeah, well, watch this.
Yeah, I think they got some mojo, Ty.
Yep, I agree with you, and so, but the beauty to me, and before David, I'll let you tell us what your thought is, and because you're the only one in this room that stays awake past 10 o'clock at night. But the beauty of this whole thing to me is, you would get, if you ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 different answers.
Good point.
And that's what the College World Series to me this year is. And and now we all know who we're rooting for and who we want to win.
Yeah.
But I think if there was 7 other people sitting in this room with us right now discussing this, I think we'd get 7 different answers.
On our side of the bracket, I'm a Texas man, so I'm going with Texas. I do think we have to stay in the winners bracket, and that includes past game 1. I think we got to go 2-0 and then figure out with the pitching, get it rested up, how to win one of those next 2 games to get to the finals. So I like Texas. If not us, I think it's OU. I think they do have Skip's done a great job bringing along the pitching. I think they're a little bit deeper. They're not, they don't have 10 deep, but they've got a couple of guys throwing the ball well. So I like Texas, but if not us, it'd be OU. And I'm going to take Stanford on the other side. I know it's all about pitching usually, but since pitching's, Stanford can really mash. I mean, they can hit. They can.
Yep.
The thing about it is, not only can they hit bombs, they get 2 strikes. They can go Lowery and hit it, on a line the other way. But no, the same guy that hit it over the trees can go hit, like he's a senior.
I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Let's go back. You can go Lowery. Is that what you just said?
No, they can go opposite field.
He said, I kept waiting. This is all my fault because when he said something about you a minute ago about being one of the greatest hitters, which you are in Texas history,
single guy.
Okay, I didn't know.
It's every episode. You do this every episode. You guys just what I'm here for. I'm like the Rodney Dangerfield of this thing.
Get no respect.
None.
They retired as number 3, didn't they?
Yeah.
No, but you can look up. Usually he puts it on his wall. He puts it on his wall back there.
His picture. I can't
he
believe
usually has
that.
a picture of himself.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I meant they can hit. They can just flat out hit and hit with power. Is what I was trying to do before Ty so rudely.
No, and I agree with you. And everybody in the public knows how I feel like you were one of the best hitters in Texas.
No, that's not what I was saying.
And I have said it, so I'm picking at you.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they can hit the ball the other way when they need to, and then catch it out front and hit it over the trees. So anyway, like Texas and Stanford. Okay, shut this thing down. That's it, Warren. That's good.
I tell you one more thing. I got to ask Keith this because I agree with him, and I hadn't really thought about this as much. We were talking about the left-handed hitter from Auburn because I think he's a really pro-looking hitter too when he's swinging. But it is interesting. He does have really lightning hands. But going back to Ivan, what he's been able to do this year is, the year before the book on him was to throw the ball on top of him.
Yes.
Try to not allow him to get extended. And how he's become, and everybody uses this, and I totally agree because I was listening the morning you said that he is, by far maybe the best right-handed hitter in the University of Texas history. And for him to do what he has done, what I'm about to say to me still baffles me. 32 home runs. I don't know,
I think he's become he's a hitter with a ton of potential and a ton of power. He got with Tulo this offseason, through the fall and through the spring. He's become an incredible hitter, handling that inside, that harder stuff inside, fighting it off till they make the mistake outside. Much better hitter. He'd go through those long streaks. He'd go a week and hit a home run every game. And he'd go 3 weeks, you wouldn't know where he went. Not this year. He's been a good, consistent hitter from start to finish. I think just as a hitter, he's grown this year.
Well, he changed. He had a stance change when he came into the year. Opened up his front side a little bit. And the other part of that is I don't know that he has gotten much better at getting to the inside fastball, but he knows when to take it. Yep. And he knows what it is. His pitch recognition is so much better. And that's what's hurt other teams. They put the shift on him. They think 2 outs, man on second base, we'll just pitch him away. Well, he stands with an open stance. He's there on the plate, recognizes I'm not going to swing at anything in. He's looking for something out of the plate to go the other direction. I think he has really made a good adjustment as a hitter, not just a power hitter, but as a hitter. Right. And I think if you look at last year's, they show a highlight of him homering against Mississippi State last year. Look at that when you those folks watching this podcast, when you see it, because you'll see it again over the next few days. And you'll see he's got a little bit of a closed front side, and then look at his approach and his stance this year. It's open more a little bit on the front side. His hands are a little bit different spot. And I think you always have to adjust as a hitter, and he's done a great job of that.
Yep. That's interesting. He said he's learned when to lay off that inner half instead of getting tied up with it. Yeah, he's
done a really good job where he hasn't offered, and he's taken the bend hit by pitch. He's not afraid to get out of what I mean. He turns into it good, and he's just laid off of that pitch. And so that's all of a sudden allowed him to look away all the time. His recognition of ball and strike inside has changed.
Yep. And that's agreed. I tell you, the last little layer I put on that too, and Keith is 100% right on that. His free base ratio, the strikeout ratio is through the roof. But the other piece of that layer of that is that guy hitting behind him. They make you try to. I mean, I just is unbelievable. Yeah. They don't have a choice. Choose which one you want. And so,
what a year he's had. My God.
Incredible.
Good stuff. I'm ready for
gentlemen. I got to roll.
All right,
guys. Thanks for being here.
That's fun. Thank you, Keith. I'm glad you're feeling better, man.
Great to see you, by the way. I'm glad you're doing good.
Yeah.
Hanging in there, guys. Y'all, good luck.
All right. See you back.